Hello everybody, welcome back to another edition of Reddit stories, but I read them to you. Today we have, from Ask Reddit, what is the scariest story you know to be completely true? Guy I used to work with was murdered and dismembered by his crime partner who was caught just nonchalantly driving his vehicle around town. A couple years before, I had had a conversation with him, the murder victim, about concealed carry licenses and how that would work inside a workplace. And he told me the story about his ex-wife was plotting to kill him and how he'd worked out carrying a gun on campus with security, only to be murdered and dismembered by someone else a couple years later. So imagine thinking all these years that your ex-wife is going to murder you and it ends up being a completely different person. My cousin picked up a hitchhiker about 20 years ago. Nice enough guy. Cousin was hungry, so stopped at McDonald's, grabbed the hitchhiker some breakfast too. Dropped him off where the guy had said he was headed, no big deal. Next morning, my cousin's watching the morning news and sees that hitchhiker's face. Dude was a serial killer and had killed someone that picked him up. Cousin calls the cops and they have him come in. Turns out the hitchhiker had killed the very next person after my cousin that had given him a ride. He'd killed a few people that had given him rides. That was his MO. They asked the hitchhiker why he didn't kill my cousin. He said, I'd planned to, but he was a really nice young man. He bought me breakfast. I couldn't kill someone that bought me breakfast. If I could take anything from the story, I would say if I ever pick up a hitchhiker, which I probably won't, but if I ever do, I'm gonna buy them a meal. Because chances are, could be a serial killer and buying that meal could save my life. My childhood friends took over a gas plant in Algeria, held the workers hostage, and then killed 37 people and themselves. A fourth member of the London group appears to have disappeared. Friends, you say? Sounds like this Redditor may be the fourth guy. And now we found him. Someone at my school vanished for a week with no leads other than a video of him on a security camera at a McDonald's 2 towns over. A week later, his body turned up in the lake in a bay. They never figured out what happened to him. Somebody at McDonald's for sure. People disappear all the time, but it really is weird when it's someone you know. I grew up in Toronto, but moved away after grade 7. Their credit card company used to put pics of missing kids on their statements, and decades later, I recognized the girl in the envelope. We had gone to public school together. She had very dark hair, almost black, and a distinctive gap between her front teeth. Turns out a couple years after I moved out west, she disappeared. There had been some sightings in the 2 or 3 years that followed, but nothing solid. In the next 30 or so years, nothing. I was hiking down from doing 2 weeks of trail work in Colorado a few summers ago. A guy hiking up stopped to chat with us about our work and asked if we had seen anyone make the summit while we were up there. We told him that the first summit of the season had been done a few days prior and wished him luck. A friend of mine hiked in that area the next day and there was a helicopter circling around. The guy had taken the wrong goalie back down and died. It's still crazy to me to think about. My great-grandfather came home from World War II with shell shock, and my great-grandma refused to sleep in the same bed as him because he would keep repeating, "No, don't kill Tom," which was what he said before he witnessed his childhood friend getting killed. He luckily managed to get therapy and was okay, but wheelchair-bound up until I was about 11, where at Christmas dinner he sat while we all ate, completely frozen. My granddad asked, "You okay, Dad?" To which he started crying and suddenly let out a very loud and hurt-filled, "Don't kill Tommy," and started crying. I know it's not scary, but it freaked me out. The trauma men of this generation repressed is unreal. My relative was involved with liberating a smaller concentration camp at the end of the war. When he finally came home, his whole family threw a big feast for him to welcome him home. He stared at the table full of abundant, lovingly home-cooked food and just walked out. These are sad. A friend's father just dropped dead while brushing his teeth with his youngest daughter, 6 years old. They never found out what happened, so they figured he had a brain hemorrhage. Happened to my ex's father. He was late 50s and perfectly healthy. He traveled to London for a conference for work. He called after landing and checking into his hotel. Then no one heard from him for about 36 hours. They were able to get in touch with the police who did a welfare check. They found he had died of a brain hemorrhage shortly after getting to his hotel room. Well, now I'm gonna have trauma just brushing my teeth. And the scary thing is that I guess you could literally die at any second. So, that's terrifying. My wife's neighbor completely lost his shit. He killed his whole family, the dogs, and he even shot the houseplants and the fish tank. Edit, since people keep saying silly things, this happened before my wife and I got married. Didn't even know she existed yet. Damn, even the houseplants? That is an outrageous level of hate for life. Yeah, shooting the houseplants and the fish tank, dude. You couldn't even let the fish survive? Or the plants? I mean, really? My dad got into a car crash head-on with a convertible with a young couple in it, and the top part of the convertible window decapitated them instantly. He ended up falling into something red, berries or blood, and when the cops and medics showed up, they were freaking out and telling him to lay down. He was actually fine. Witnessing that screwed him up though. Yeah, that's some like Final Destination shit, and I think that if I were ever able to witness that, I don't think I'd ever be able to get over it. Honestly, it might even be better to be the one getting decapitated. I know that sounds insane, but like thinking about the trauma that you would have to live with for the rest of your life, I couldn't even imagine it. Bayer knowingly sold HIV contaminated medication to South Americans in order to not lose profit. They were caught and fined, but their profit was far higher than the fine. So literally infecting and killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people was lucrative. I don't understand why the law doesn't essentially take all money a violating corporation made off of unethical, illegal sales and then also fine them. If a fine is merely a fraction of an illegal cost-cutting method, there isn't a lot stopping them from doing unethical stuff. Because corporations donate heavily to political campaigns, so no politician would ever propose or advocate for such a law. That's true. This one is personal. My family and I are staying in a rental house for a few months because my dad was shit with money. This particular house was owned by a fairly wealthy friend of his who was going through a divorce because his wife had developed a long and nasty drug problem. So we're staying there pretty cheap. One night near Christmas, I groggily wake up and see a woman wearing white going through drawers on the other side of the room. I must have made a sound because she turned and rushed over to me and gently said, "Shh, go back to sleep, little boy." Weirdly, I did. She looked like Liza Minnelli, if that's at all relevant. I don't know who that is. Next morning, I wake up to my parents acting weird and I hear one of them make a comment like, "I can't tell what's gone and what's not." For some reason, I didn't connect the dots until I was older and never told them what I saw. I thought it was a dream. So yeah, the former crackhead owner of our rental house broke in, probably had a key, and I saw her but didn't do or say shit. I was probably 9 or so. I've told this story multiple times on here. I'm walking my dog in Philadelphia and light is turning red and a car slows down. And as it turns green, I enter the intersection and the car speeds up and I have to avoid me and the dog getting hit. I yell, "Asshole," at him and he slams on his brakes and pulls into a parking lot and parks ahead of me. I can see at this time the car had Illinois plates, and as I walk up, he says very calmly, "I wouldn't call me an asshole. I've killed people." I just keep walking. Next day, I see spree killer Andrew Cunanan had killed somebody in New Jersey and stolen his truck, leaving behind the car he took from Chicago after he killed the owner. 100% who I called the asshole. Damn. This guy really called a serial killer an asshole. I don't know how he walks around with these big ass balls. My family literally had a party to die for. We hosted a super late Christmas party in March. We invited a few neighbors over, including an older couple, beyond a few weird comments from the old husband like, "I'm so glad I could have one last good meal." We all had a good time. Everyone kept telling us how great the party and food was. Eventually, the old couple go home a bit earlier than the rest of the guests, and we don't think anything of it. About an hour later, as another guest was about to leave, they come rushing back into the house, yelling about police and medics on our street. Turns out the husband of the old couple simply dropped dead about 30 minutes after they got home. I guess to be fair, a big talking point at the party was how he was already basically on his last leg thanks to health conditions, and it was only a matter of time, but we didn't think it'd be that soon. So he literally had his last meal, and it seemed like he knew that it was going to be his last meal, which is insane to me. All right, y'all. Well, that is it for today's Reddit stories. Gonna be honest, thought they were going to be like spooky, scary, but it turns out they were really just like terrifying and sad. So I'm sorry if your expectations were different. Mine definitely were. But if I could take anything away from what I had just read, I would say, number one, if you pick up a hitchhiker, make sure that you buy them a meal, because if you buy a meal, you might avoid getting killed. Number two, you stay away from convertibles. Number three, don't call a serial killer an asshole or anybody because they may be a serial killer. And then number four, if you're gonna have a last meal, make sure it is a very good one. Thanks for watching.